Hey, happy Friday, July 18, options expiration Friday at that. Neil here with the Voodoo Mastery end of week market wrap up and have a look at what we've got here going on here. I'll clean this chart up here in just a minute, but start by pointing out a couple of things. That is that this is a weekly chart too, by the way, you can see on the SPX. So the break that we experienced mid-February into early April, full recovery. Now, on that note, once we clear this 887 retrace, we're looking for a few targets. All right, one is just a new high, which we've gotten, and then next would be a 1272 extension. And now notice up here on this 1272 extension, it happens to be exactly where the September quarterlies are for that next JPM collar at 6505's 1272 extension, and that is on SPX. And you can find that open interest if you go to the trade tab, options chain. Look at the open interest on the September quarterlies at that strike. It's pretty massive. All right, now I need to clean this up a little bit so we can kind of see here what we've got going on. Next thing I want to notice is that the degree of, slope and separation. The slope is absolutely just, it's parabolic. The separation's getting to be a little concerning here, and that is the distance back to the averages. Now, even to get back into like a weekly, 80 MA, the daily 50, all these, we're so far extended, it's just crazy. Look at the bottom with me down here, the subgraph. This is a new indicator written by David Starr he's also the proprietor of the Voodoo Lines, an absolutely incredible indicator set. And another thing I want to point out up here is that we are overbought. Okay. Now, in the trade room today, John Carter posted that he was going flat. Now, he is traveling for the next couple of weeks out of the country, but he's going all the way flat to cash. And then did also mention that statistically next week was likely a down week. So I want to kind of prepare for that. The fact that, Netflix reported quite well, actually, but then sold off some 65 some odd dollars today, back down to about 1,200, was a little, kind of interesting, concerning too. I'm wondering, and I'll just tell you what we're doing, okay? We're long, and we're trying to stay long, but for me, I'm losing some positions to covered calls, and I also had a lot of short, cash covered, just naked short puts on that were expiring today as well. And my point is that frees up a fair amount of available cash, capital, buying power, etc. And I'm not in a super hurry, honestly, to start to reallocate that available working capital. I'm just not. And the reason is what I'm explaining. I mean, we're just extended up here, it feels like. Now look at the squeeze indicator with me here for a minute. Since the low down here, you could start counting weeks, there, but I'll be conservative and just start counting from, when it starts to breach the zero line here. We're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, right? We say that the average duration of that, we generally look for 6 to 8, right? Well, we're pressing the outside of that while overbought and extended away from the averages up here. I don't know when the retracement starts, but I have an idea of what I'll be looking for when that is. Now, all I can tell you is what I'm doing, and that is I'm staying long But what I am losing to cover calls and the buying power that's freeing up from those short puts, I'm really not in a big hurry to start to reallocate that. I'm going to try to see if I can be patient and try to do that on a pullback. And I think that's just makes sense for me, at least. Stay long, but then not go. And I was, golly, I mean, I want to say almost 100, like 98, 99% in, like all in. Okay, so I'm not at these levels anxious to reallocate, not yet. So on retrace, we're going to get our first hint on smaller time frames, of course, right? And we'll get maybe a signal of some kind of topping and start to pull back. But if even if you wanted to kind of be conservative and wait and see, then I will tell you that what it's doing right now is making higher lows on this weekly, and it's doing the same on the daily. And so what we will see at some point will be it stops doing that, right? So that'll end the one time framing up. So on the weekly, the first thing you're going to see would be a breach of this, and you can see it labeled here, important, SPX over under. It's about 61.95. So it's really 61.94, but just basically think 61.95, right? So from up here, I'm going to be trying to look for about a 3 to 5% retracement. Now, a 3% retracement is going to pull it back to, very interestingly, coincidentally, and the level's about 6,100 and call it, 05 or something like that. So essentially 6,100. But that would just be to come back and retest, these highs, and that may do it. That may be it. And that would come back, and that would essentially just come back and test like the 8 or 9 EMA, which would be the mean average of the last 21 weeks. That's what that red line in the middle is. And that may do it. I don't know. But I could also tell you that a 5% retracement would bring it back to very close to this 236 retrace. Now that's really what I would like to see. I don't know if we can get that far, but because this market is very bullish. It is higher time frame, longer term, obviously bullish. Historically, if you look back in a seasonal kind of a thing, July is bullish, but August, September, not so much, right? So we can maybe get a little pullback, in August. We'll see, but I'm I'm telling you how I'm handling it and what I'm looking for in terms, of kind of that retrace. Now I'll switch over to a daily and point out that you see here we had the big 1 day sell off there, right? One single day. And that was an excess that finished firm, and then of course we triggered long into the end of this week. New all-time high yet again. Another new all-time high. But on the daily chart, you're going to get your first kind of feel for this thing maybe starting to come in, like I said, when it ends this one-time framing up. And say it takes out like this Friday and next week, takes out this Friday and Thursday lows. Okay, well then, then it's possible that it's starting to come in. And you'll know that you've got something sure enough on your hands, 61.95, and then I'm looking down. 3% is that 61 kind of 05 level, and then 5% is going to bring it back into this. This where the last liftoff kind of started from. And what's interesting about that too is that also overlaps and coincides with a 236 retrace of the entire move up from the April lows. Okay, so if you come measure all the way back to the April lows, then to get that 5% that I'm talking about happens to also be a 236 retrace. So when it starts, I don't know. My goodness, it certainly has not yet. but I do have a plan that I've already, outlined and kind of given you what that is and how I'm trying to trade it and how I'm trading it. So I hope that helps. And we'll do this all again next week every day. So come join us in the Voodoo Mastery Room at Simpler Trading, and we'd love to have you. Not much. Today, if you look back in the Stock Traders Almanac, today is supposed to be, kind of a bearish day. It reads that it was down 15 of the last 24. And it is down a little. I mean, certainly not much. I mean, let's see, going into the close here, the S&Ps are down a fraction. What is that? 2 points or something? I mean, so it's not much, right? The low today so far, and it's late in the day, but the low for the day probably is actually the daily pivot. That's not much. I mean, it was 25 points off the highs. That's it. So it's not a big deal. So I don't feel like anything has really started, obviously, yet. I mean, we just made another new all-time high. No, I can't say that. It may have actually started today. Who knows? The one thing that was, really pretty interesting was Netflix today, and it's, coming off the way it did. That was kind of telling. It was interesting. Now it stayed within its expected move. I think the expected move was $75, and it was down like 65. But that was some selling. So anyway, listen, we'll do this all again. Yeah, down to 1,200. So it says $67. This would be the first of two places that I can see that you can buy this. This turning point right back on, what is that, June 10th and 11th right there. And it is the 887. And if it closes beyond that, well, then it's just like I pointed out on the SPX on the highs, right? You'd look for it to make a new low for the move beyond there. And the next place that I would see, but we don't know that yet, right? It has to close below the 887. Then you say, okay, then I'm thinking new low, and then you're looking back to like this spot down here, like another, what is that, $80 or something. So we shall see, right? And we'll do it all again next week. So until then, wish you good trading, and I hope you have a good weekend. Take care.
Without Simpler Trading, I could not have financial independence.
This is one of the best investments I ever made in my life.
It's helping me find consistency. It's one of the things that won me